They told me I was invisible at my own daughter's gala. I sat there, alone, while whispers curled around me like smoke, as if I didn't belong. The weight of their stares crushed something inside me that night. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would share. And if for even a second this feels familiar, I only ask that you like this video and subscribe. It will help me keep opening my heart. My name is Margaret, and for 73 years, I thought love meant sacrifice. I thought being a good mother meant disappearing into the shadows while my children shined. I was wrong about so many things. But that night at the Metropolitan Museum Gala, surrounded by Manhattan's elite in their designer gowns and perfect smiles, I learned the most painful truth of all. Sometimes the people we love most can make us feel the smallest. The morning of the gala started like any other. I woke up in my cramped studio apartment on the Lower East Side, the sound of garbage trucks grinding their way down Delancey Street mixing with the distant rumble of the subway below. My arthritis was acting up again, making my fingers stiff as I tried to button my housecoat. The smell of coffee brewing in my old percolator filled the small space, along with the lingering scent of the lavender candles I bought at the dollar store. They reminded me of better times, when I could afford the real ones from Bergdorf Goodman. I shuffled to my tiny kitchen, past the stack of unpaid bills on my card table, past the photograph of my daughter Rebecca winning her first dance recital when she was 8. Her smile in that picture could have lit up Times Square. I wondered when that smile stopped being for me, when it became something she saved for everyone else. The invitation sat on my counter, embossed with gold lettering that caught the morning light streaming through my one small window. The Children's Hospital Benefit Gala. Rebecca was the event coordinator, and after months of my subtle hints and not-so-subtle requests, she had finally invited me. I had bought the lavender dress at Macy's with my Social Security money, even though it meant eating peanut butter sandwiches for 2 weeks. The dress hung on my closet door like a promise, like hope draped in polyester. My phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. "Mom, the car will pick you up at 6. Please remember what we talked about. This is important for my career." What we talked about. The conversation that still made my stomach twist into knots. "Just smile and be pleasant, Mom. These people aren't used to, well, they're not used to our background. Maybe keep the stories about Dad's construction work to yourself. And please, please don't mention the apartment. Tell them you live on the Upper East Side." I had nodded and smiled, the way I always did when my children asked me to shrink myself to fit into their lives. But something inside me cracked that day, like ice breaking on the Hudson River in spring. I just didn't know it yet. The hours crawled by until 6 o'clock. I had showered twice, applied my makeup with shaking hands, and sprayed myself with the white shoulders perfume I'd worn for 30 years. In the mirror, I saw an old woman trying to look younger, a poor woman trying to look wealthy, a mother trying to look worthy of her daughter's acknowledgement. The car was a black sedan, sleek and expensive. The driver was polite but distant, calling me ma'am in a way that felt more like stranger than respected elder. As we pulled away from my building, I watched my neighborhood disappear through tinted windows. The bodegas and laundromats gave way to boutiques and cafes. The people on the sidewalks grew more polished, their clothes more expensive, their posture more confident. I had lived in New York my entire life, but there were parts of it that always felt foreign to me. The Met was one of those places. As the car pulled up to the museum's grand entrance, I saw women in gowns that cost more than I made in a year stepping out of limousines. Their jewelry caught the light from the street lamps like tiny stars. I smoothed my polyester dress and tried to remember how to breathe. The Great Hall was transformed into something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers hung from the soaring ceiling like frozen fireworks. Tables draped in ivory silk were set with china so delicate it looked like it might shatter if you looked at it too hard. The air hummed with conversation and laughter, the sound of people who belonged here, who were comfortable in spaces like this. I stood near the entrance for what felt like hours, clutching my small purse and searching the crowd for Rebecca. When I finally spotted her, my breath caught in my throat. She was radiant in a black designer gown, her hair pulled back in an elegant chignon, diamond earrings sparkling as she threw her head back in laughter. She was surrounded by a group of younger women, all of them polished and perfect, all of them looking at her with the kind of admiration I hadn't seen directed at my daughter in years. I started walking toward her, my heels clicking against the marble floor. With each step, I felt more out of place, more aware of the cheapness of my dress, the drugstore makeup on my face, the way my purse looked shabby next to the designer handbags around me. "Rebecca," I called softly when I was close enough. She turned, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Embarrassment? Annoyance? She quickly masked it with a bright smile, but I had seen it. After 35 years of being her mother, I could read every expression on her face like a book written in my own handwriting. Mom, she said, her voice carefully modulated. You made it. How nice. How nice. Like I was a distant acquaintance who had shown up unexpectedly. Not like I was the woman who had carried her for 9 months, who had walked the floors with her through countless sleepless nights, who had worked 2 jobs to pay for her dance lessons and college tuition. She introduced me to her friends with the same enthusiasm she might have used to point out the coat check. This is my mother, Margaret. Not my mom, not the woman who raised me, just Margaret. A name among many. The women smiled politely and made small talk about the weather, the decorations, anything except who I was or why I mattered. I felt myself becoming smaller with each passing minute, shrinking until I was barely visible even to myself. Mom, Rebecca said, leaning in close enough that I could smell her expensive perfume. There's a table in the back where they're seating some of the other family members. I think you'd be more comfortable there. The other family members. Like we were a category to be managed, a problem to be solved. I nodded and followed her directions to a table near the kitchen doors, where the sounds of clattering dishes mixed with the orchestral music from the main dining area. I sat between an elderly man who introduced himself as someone's uncle and a middle-aged woman who was someone else's sister-in-law. We were the relatives, the ones who had paid for tickets but weren't quite good enough for the important tables. I watched Rebecca throughout the evening, moving gracefully from table to table, air-kissing donors and board members, her laugh carrying across the room like music. She never once looked in my direction. Never once acknowledged that I was there, that I existed, that I was the reason she could be so confident and poised in the first place. The speeches began after dinner. Rebecca walked to the podium in her perfect dress and delivered a perfect presentation about the hospital's work. She talked about sacrifice, about the parents who give everything for their children's health and happiness. She spoke eloquently about the importance of family, about how love could overcome any obstacle. I sat in the back, my heart breaking with every word, wondering how she couldn't see the irony. How she couldn't see me. But the worst was yet to come. During the cocktail hour after the speeches, I finally worked up the courage to approach her again. I had practiced what I would say, how proud I was of her work, how beautifully she had spoken. I wanted to tell her she looked radiant, that I could see so much of her father in her confidence, so much of my mother in her grace. I waited until she finished talking to a distinguished-looking couple, then stepped forward. Rebecca, honey, you were wonderful up there. I'm so proud. She turned to me with a look I will never forget. Cold. Distant. Like I was a stranger who had interrupted something important. Mom, she said quietly, but with steel in her voice. Please. Keep quiet. Keep quiet. 2 words that sliced through me like a blade. Not now, Mom, or, can we talk later? Just keep quiet. Like my voice didn't matter. Like my pride in her was an embarrassment. Like my love was something to be ashamed of. I felt the blood drain from my face. Around us, conversations continued, glasses clinked, people laughed. But I stood frozen in that moment, those 2 words echoing in my head like the sound of a door slamming shut. I walked back to my table in the back, past all the beautiful people in their beautiful clothes, and sat down heavily in my chair. The uncle and the sister-in-law were discussing their grandchildren, their voices warm with affection and pride. I wanted to join in, to talk about Rebecca's accomplishments, her intelligence, her beauty. But the words wouldn't come. They were stuck behind the wall of keep quiet that she had built between us. I excused myself and found a ladies' room tucked away in a quiet corner of the museum. In the mirror, I saw an old woman with smeared mascara and a trembling lower lip. I saw someone who had spent her entire life making herself smaller so others could be bigger, and who had just been asked to disappear completely. I thought about leaving then. Just walking out into the New York night and finding my way home on the subway, like I did every other day of my life. But something kept me there, some stubborn refusal to let this moment define me completely. I fixed my makeup, straightened my shoulders, and walked back into that glittering room. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and polite nodding. When the event finally ended, Rebecca came over to say goodbye. She was flushed with success, glowing from all the compliments she'd received. Thank you for coming, Mom, she said, kissing my cheek like I was a duty she was checking off her list. The car will take you home. I wanted to say so many things. I wanted to tell her how her words had hurt me, how invisible she had made me feel, how much I needed her to see me as more than just an obligation. Instead, I smiled and nodded, the way I had been doing my entire life. It was lovely, dear. You must be so pleased. I am, she said. This could open a lot of doors for me. Doors? Always doors opening for other people, never for me. I was the one who held them open, who stood aside so others could walk through. When did I stop believing I deserved to walk through some doors myself? The ride home was silent except for the sound of traffic and the distant hum of the city. I watched the neighborhoods change again, from wealth back to working class, from possibility back to reality. When the car pulled up to my building, the driver got out to help me, his kindness the first genuine human warmth I had felt all evening. Back in my apartment, I sat on my small couch still wearing my lavender dress. I didn't turn on the lights, the glow from the street lamps outside was enough. I thought about all the times I had sacrificed for Rebecca and her brother David. All the times I had gone without so they could have more. All the times I had ignored my own needs, my own dreams, my own desires, because being a good mother meant putting them first in everything. I thought about working 2 jobs when they were young, cleaning offices at night after spending all day at the department store. I remembered coming home exhausted, my feet aching from standing for 12 hours, only to help with homework and make dinner and listen to their problems. I remembered never complaining, never asking for help, never admitting how tired I was or how lonely or how scared. I thought about my ex-husband Robert, who had left when the children were in high school because he said he felt suffocated by family responsibility. I had been angry then, devastated by his abandonment. But sitting in my quiet apartment after that humiliating evening, I wondered if I understood him a little better. What did it feel like to matter? To be seen as more than just a provider, a caretaker, a person whose value was measured only by what you could give to others? The next morning brought no relief. I woke up with my dress wrinkled around me, my makeup smeared on my pillowcase, and a headache that felt like it went all the way down to my bones. My phone showed 3 missed calls from David, Rebecca's younger brother. I called him back, expecting sympathy, maybe even an apology on his sister's behalf. David had always been the gentler of my 2 children, more aware of other people's feelings, more considerate. But when he answered the phone, his tone was brisk, businesslike. "Mom, Rebecca told me what happened last night." My heart jumped. "She did?" "Yes, and I have to say, I'm disappointed. She worked for months organizing that event. It was important for her professionally, and you made it difficult by demanding attention." Demanding attention. Is that what I had done? By existing? By being proud of my daughter? By wanting her to acknowledge that I was there? "David, I didn't, Mom, you can't keep expecting the world to revolve around you. Rebecca has her own life, her own career. You need to respect that." Respect. There was that word again. But what about respecting me? What about respecting the woman who had given everything so they could have their lives and careers and dreams? "I just wanted to tell her I was proud," I said quietly. "You can tell her that in private, Mom. Not at her work events. Look, I've got to go. I'm in court in 20 minutes. But maybe you should think about what you really want from us, because this guilt trip thing isn't working anymore." Guilt trip thing. Like my love was manipulation. Like my need to be seen and valued was a weapon I was using against them. He hung up without saying goodbye, and I sat in my kitchen holding the phone long after the line went dead. Outside my window, the city was waking up. People hurried down the sidewalks with their coffee cups and briefcases, heading to jobs where they mattered, where their contributions were valued, where their voices were heard. I had been retired for 8 years, since the department store closed and I couldn't find another job. My Social Security barely covered my rent and groceries, but I had never asked my children for help. I had too much pride for that, and I had seen what happened to elderly parents who became financial burdens on their successful children. They were resented, seen as obstacles to overcome rather than people to cherish. But even though I had never asked for money, I had continued to give it. Birthday gifts for grandchildren I rarely saw. Christmas presents that were acknowledged with perfunctory thank you texts. Contributions to Rebecca's apartment fund, David's car payment, their children's dance lessons and soccer fees. I gave because I thought it would keep me connected to them, make me necessary in some small way. Now I wondered if it just made me feel more desperate, more invisible. Love that had to be purchased wasn't love at all. The days after the gala blurred together in a haze of hurt and confusion. I replayed the evening over and over in my mind, searching for what I had done wrong, how I could have been different, better, more acceptable to my own daughter. I thought about the way she had looked at me, like I was something embarrassing she needed to manage. I thought about "keep quiet" and how those words had the power to erase me completely. I had raised my voice only to express pride, and that was too much. I had existed in her space, and that was too much. I had been myself, and that was too much. What version of me would have been acceptable to her? A silent one? An invisible one? A mother who existed only when summoned, only when needed, only when convenient. A week passed before Rebecca called. I was so grateful to hear her voice that I almost cried right there at the kitchen table. "Hi, Mom. How are you feeling?" "Better, sweetheart. How are you? How are things at work?" "Good. Really good." The gala raised more money than any previous year. Mr. Harrison was very pleased. Mr. Harrison. The board president. More important to her than I was. That's wonderful, dear. You must be so proud of your work. I am. Listen, Mom, I wanted to talk to you about the other night. I think maybe we had some miscommunication. Miscommunication. Like the problem was that I had misunderstood being told to keep quiet, being seated in the back, being introduced like a stranger. I don't think I misunderstood anything, Rebecca. You seemed upset when you left. I was hurt. A pause. Then, in that careful tone she used when she was trying to manage a difficult situation, Mom, I know you were excited about coming to the gala, but you have to understand the position I was in. These people, they matter for my career. You couldn't just acknowledge your mother? Another pause, longer this time. It's not that simple. It seems simple to me. Either you're proud to be my daughter, or you're not. That's not fair. Fair. Nothing about the way she treated me was fair, but somehow I was the one being unfair by pointing it out. Rebecca, do you remember when you were 8 and you won that dance recital? Mom, do you remember how proud you were? How you ran off that stage and threw your arms around me and said, "Did you see me, Mama? Did you see me dance?" Silence. I saw you, I continued. I saw you then, and I see you now. I see everything you've accomplished, everything you've become. I'm proud of the woman you are, even when you make me feel like I don't exist. I don't make you feel, yes, you do. You told me to keep quiet at your event. You put me at a table in the back like I was something to be hidden. You introduced me to your friends like I was a stranger whose name you couldn't quite remember. I was working, Mom. It wasn't about you. I know it wasn't about me. That's the problem. Nothing in your life is about me anymore. I'm just the woman who bankrolled your dreams and then became too embarrassing to acknowledge. That's not true. When was the last time you called me just to talk? Not because you needed something, not because it was a holiday, but just because you wanted to hear my voice. Another silence, longer than the others. In that quiet space, I heard the truth neither of us wanted to acknowledge. I call you plenty, she said finally, but her voice had lost its certainty. You call me when you need me to babysit Nathan. You call me when you need money for his school clothes. You call me when you need someone to pick up your dry cleaning because you're too busy. But when was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? To ask if I was lonely or scared or if I needed anything? The silence stretched between us like an ocean. I'm busy, Mom. You know that. Everyone's busy, Rebecca. But people make time for what matters to them. You matter to me. No, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. I matter to you when you need something. The rest of the time, I'm an obligation you check off your list. I'm not having this conversation with you. No, I don't suppose you are. Because that would require you to actually listen to me, and we both know you stopped doing that years ago. She hung up then, without another word. I sat holding the phone, not surprised but somehow still disappointed. Even in a conversation about how she didn't hear me, she had chosen not to listen. The apartment felt smaller that day, like the walls were closing in. I walked to my small window and looked out at the street below. People were living their lives, going to work, meeting friends, being part of the world. When had I stopped being part of the world? When had I allowed my entire existence to revolve around two people who barely tolerated me? I thought about my mother then, about how she had lived with us for the last 5 years of her life. I remembered being impatient with her sometimes, annoyed by her questions, her needs, her presence. I remembered thinking she was too demanding, too needy, too much work. Had I made her feel the way Rebecca was making me feel now? Had I been so focused on my own life that I couldn't see how small I was making her? The guilt of that realization hit me like a physical blow. My mother had died feeling invisible, just like I was feeling now. The cycle was complete, and I hated that I had been part of it. But maybe it wasn't too late to break it. Maybe I could still choose differently, still demand more for myself than tolerance and obligation. Maybe I could still remember who I was before I became just Rebecca's mother, and David's mother, and nothing else. I pulled out my old photo albums that night, the ones I kept in the bottom drawer of my dresser. There I was at 25, laughing at some long-forgotten joke. There I was at 30, dancing at my best friend Carol's wedding. There I was at 35, holding Rebecca as a baby but looking confident, capable, beautiful. When had I stopped seeing that woman in the mirror? When had I decided she wasn't worth fighting for? The photos told the story of a life I had forgotten I lived. A woman who had dreams beyond her children, who had interests and opinions and desires of her own. A woman who had been reduced to nothing more than a supporting character in someone else's story. I found a picture of Carol and me from 2 years ago, the last time we had managed to get together for lunch. She was living in Florida now, in a retirement community where she had made new friends, where she took art classes and went on day trips to the beach. She had invited me to visit dozens of times, but I had always said no. What if Rebecca needed me? What if David called? What if one of the grandchildren had an emergency? What if? I had built my entire life around hypothetical needs that rarely materialized into actual requests for my presence. Meanwhile, the real opportunities for joy and connection passed me by, one declined invitation at a time. I called Carol that night, my hands shaking as I dialed her number. It was late, but she had always been a night owl. Margaret? Her voice was warm, surprised, delighted. Honey, how are you? I started to give her my usual answer, fine, everything's fine, but the words wouldn't come. I'm not good, Carol. I'm not good at all. And then the story poured out of me. The gala, the humiliation, the conversation with Rebecca, the years of feeling invisible and unimportant. Carol listened without interruption, making small sounds of sympathy and understanding. Oh, sweetheart, she said when I finished. I'm so sorry. But I can't say I'm surprised. You're not? Margaret, I've been watching this happen for years. Every time we talked, it was about what Rebecca needed or what David was doing. Never about what you needed or what you were doing. I kept wondering when you were going to wake up and realize you were disappearing. Disappearing. That was exactly what it felt like. Like I was fading away, becoming less solid with each passing day. I don't know how to stop it, I admitted. The same way you stop anything else that's hurting you, Carol said. You just stop. You stop giving more than you get. You stop accepting crumbs and calling them a feast. You stop believing that being needed is the same thing as being loved. But they're my children. And you're their mother. That should mean something. That should mean you deserve their respect, their consideration, their genuine affection. Not their convenience. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and thought about what Carol had said. Being needed wasn't the same as being loved. I had confused the two for so long that I had forgotten there was a difference. Rebecca needed me when it was convenient. She needed me to babysit so she could go out with friends. She needed me to contribute money when her budget was tight. She needed me to be understanding when she was too busy to call. But did she love me? Did she value me as a person, or just as a resource? The same questions applied to David. He needed me to not make waves, not cause problems, not demand too much attention. But when was the last time he had shown me genuine affection? When was the last time either of them had done something simply to make me happy, with no benefit to themselves? I was 73 years old, and I was just beginning to understand the difference between being used and being loved. The realization was both devastating and liberating. Over the next few weeks, small things began to change. When Rebecca called asking me to babysit Nathan on a Saturday so she could go shopping with friends, I said no. Not rudely, not angrily, just simply no. I had plans, I told her. It wasn't entirely true, but spending the day reading and enjoying my own company felt like plans worth protecting. She was shocked. But Mom, you love spending time with Nathan. I do love spending time with Nathan. But I don't love being called only when you need a babysitter. When was the last time you invited me to spend time with him when you were there too? When was the last time we did something together as a family? We're busy, I know you're busy. But busy people still make time for what's important to them. She didn't call again for 2 weeks. David called 3 days later. Mom, Rebecca said you're acting strange. I'm acting different. There's a distinction. She said you refused to watch Nathan. I had other plans. What plans? You never have plans. The casual cruelty of that statement took my breath away. You never have plans. Like my life was so empty, so meaningless, that the idea of me having anything to do was impossible to imagine. I have a life, David. I know that. I just meant, you meant that my life doesn't matter unless it's serving yours or your sister's needs. That's not what I said. It's what you assumed. You assumed that I would always be available, always willing to drop everything for your convenience, because what could I possibly have to do that's more important than whatever you need? He was quiet for a long moment. Are you okay, Mom? You sound different. I'm exactly as okay as I've always been. The difference is that I'm finally saying it out loud. We talked for a few more minutes, but the conversation felt strained, careful. Like I had broken some unspoken rule by suggesting that my time had value, that my life had importance beyond its utility to others. After we hung up, I realized that this was the first real conversation I'd had with David in months. Not about his job or his girlfriend or his problems, but about me. About my feelings, my needs, my perspective. It felt foreign to both of us, like we were speaking a language we'd never learned properly. I started taking walks in the neighborhood, really paying attention to my surroundings for the first time in years. The Lower East Side was changing, with hip restaurants and boutiques moving in alongside the old delis and discount stores. I would never be able to afford the new places, but I could appreciate the energy, the sense of renewal and possibility. At the corner bakery where I bought my weekly loaf of bread, I started talking to Elena, the young woman who worked behind the counter. She was from Ecuador, working to put herself through nursing school. Her English was careful but clear, and she always asked about my day with genuine interest. "You seem different lately," she said one Thursday morning as she wrapped my usual sourdough. "Happier, maybe? I'm trying some new things," I told her. "Good for you," she said, smiling. "It's never too late to try new things. Never too late." I had been telling myself I was too old to change, too set in my ways, too afraid of conflict to demand better treatment from the people I loved. But Elena was right. It was never too late to remember who you were before you became invisible. I decided to take Carol up on her invitation to visit Florida. The trip would eat up most of my savings, but what was I saving for anyway? A future where I continued to shrink, continued to accept less and less until I was nothing but a voice on the phone asking how everyone else was doing? When I told Rebecca about my travel plans, she was incredulous. "Florida? Mom, that's crazy. You can't travel alone at your age." I'm 73, not 93. And I've been taking the subway alone for 50 years. I think I can manage a flight to Palm Beach. But what if something happens? What if you get lost or sick, or what if you stop treating me like I'm incompetent? The question hung in the air between us. In the silence, I could hear her recalibrating, trying to find a new approach. "I'm just worried about you." "No, you're not. You're worried about having to deal with consequences if something goes wrong. There's a difference. That's not fair. What's not fair is assuming I'm incapable of making decisions about my own life." "I didn't say you were incapable. You didn't have to say it. You've been treating me like I am for years." Another silence, longer this time. "When are you leaving?" she asked finally. "Next month. I'll be gone for 2 weeks." 2 weeks? Mom, that's a long time. "It's not long enough," I said, and meant it. Planning the trip gave me something to look forward to for the first time in years. I researched restaurants and museums, beaches and gardens. I bought new clothes, not expensive ones, but bright colors that made me feel alive. I got my hair cut and styled, something I hadn't bothered with since Robert left. The woman in my mirror looked different. Not younger exactly, but more present. More solid. Like she was taking up the space she deserved instead of trying to disappear into the background. 3 days before I was supposed to leave, David called with news that would test every boundary I was trying to establish. "Mom, I need to ask you a favor." Here it was. The moment when my new resolve would either hold or crumble under the weight of old habits and family obligation. "What is it?" "Linda and I are having some financial problems. Her company is downsizing, and she might lose her job. We were wondering if you could help us out with rent this month." Linda was David's girlfriend of 3 years, a woman I'd met exactly twice. She was nice enough, but she wasn't family, not really. And David was asking me to use the money I'd saved for my trip to Florida to pay her rent. "How much?" I asked, though I already knew what the answer would be. $1,500. "I know it's a lot, but we're really strapped, and I didn't know who else to ask." $1,500. More than my trip would cost, more than I spent on myself in 3 months, more than they had ever offered to contribute when I was struggling. "David, I can't do that." "What do you mean you can't? Do you not have it?" "I have it. But I'm not giving it to you." The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. "Mom, we really need this. Linda's stressed out about the job situation, and if we can't make rent, you'll figure something out. You're both adults with college degrees and careers. I'm sure you'll find a solution." "Are you serious? You're going to let us get evicted because you don't want to help?" "I'm going to let you handle your own problems because that's what adults do." This is unbelievable. After everything I've done, what have you done, David? Another silence. "What have you done for me?" I repeated. "When was the last time you helped me with anything? When was the last time you offered to pay for my groceries or my medication or my heating bill? You never asked." "I shouldn't have to ask." "If you can ask me for $1,500 for your girlfriend's rent, surely you can ask if your own mother needs anything." "That's different." "Why?" "Because helping you is my job, but helping me isn't yours. I'm your son. And I'm your mother. But apparently that only matters when you need something." He was angry when he hung up, and part of me wanted to call him back, to apologize, to offer the money just to restore peace. But a larger part of me felt something I hadn't experienced in years: pride. Pride in standing up for myself, in refusing to be taken for granted, in finally saying no to demands that would leave me with less while giving others more. I went to Florida as planned. Carol picked me up at the airport, and as soon as I saw her familiar face, I started crying. Not with sadness, but with relief. Here was someone who was genuinely happy to see me, who had been looking forward to my visit not because she needed something from me, but because she enjoyed my company. We spent 2 weeks talking and laughing and remembering who we used to be before our children turned us into nothing but support systems for their dreams. Carol introduced me to her friends, and I was amazed to realize that they were interesting people who saw me as interesting too. We talked about books and politics and travel and art. We talked about everything except our children's needs and problems and demands. On my last day, as we sat watching the sunset over the ocean, Carol asked me what I was going to do when I got back to New York. I don't know, I said honestly. But I know what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to disappear again. Good for you, she said. You deserve better than you've been getting. I'm starting to believe that. The flight home gave me time to think about the changes I wanted to make, the boundaries I needed to establish, the life I wanted to reclaim. I wasn't sure how Rebecca and David would react to the new version of me, but I realized their reaction wasn't my responsibility. My responsibility was to myself, to the woman I had been before I became invisible, to the woman I could still become if I was brave enough to fight for her. When I got back to my apartment, there were 7 messages on my answering machine. 3 from Rebecca, sounding increasingly frustrated. 4 from David, sounding increasingly angry. I listened to them all, then erased them without calling back. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Let them imagine what it felt like to reach out to someone and get no response. Let them experience, just once, what it was like to be ignored by someone they loved. I unpacked slowly, savoring the memories of my trip, the feeling of having done something purely for my own joy. I had bought myself a small painting from a local artist, a seascape in blues and greens that reminded me of the ocean view from Carol's apartment. I hung it on my wall where I could see it from my chair, a reminder that beauty was still possible, that happiness was still within reach. Rebecca called while I was making dinner. Mom, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for days. I've been in Florida. I told you I was going. I thought you'd call when you got back. Why would I call when I got back? To let us know you were okay. I'm fine. You sound different. I feel different. A pause. Mom, we need to talk. About what? About this whole thing. This attitude you've developed. David told me about the money situation, and honestly, I'm disappointed. We're family. We're supposed to help each other. You're absolutely right, I said. We are supposed to help each other. When are you going to start? What do you mean? I mean, when are you going to help me? When are you going to consider my needs, my feelings, my life? You want me to give David $1,500 for his girlfriend's rent, but when was the last time you offered to help with my expenses? You expect me to babysit Nathan whenever you need it, but when was the last time you asked if I needed help with anything? That's different. It's only different because you've decided my needs don't matter as much as yours. That's not true. Then prove it. When was the last time you did something for me that didn't benefit you in some way? Another long pause. I can't think of a specific example right now, but I can. You called me 3 weeks ago because you needed someone to pick up your dry cleaning. You called me last month because you needed someone to watch Nathan. You called me in January because you needed money for his school supplies. Every interaction we've had for the past year has been about what you need from me. Not once have you called just to see how I'm doing or if there's anything I need. I care about how you're doing. Do you? What's my favorite book? What's my biggest fear? What do I dream about when I go to sleep at night? If you care about how I'm doing, you should know at least some of the answers to those questions. Silence. I thought so, I said quietly. Mom, this isn't fair. You're changing the rules without warning us. We've always had this kind of relationship. No, you've always had this kind of relationship with me. I've finally decided I deserve better. Deserve better? We're your children. We love you. You love what I do for you. You love having me available when you need something. But loving me as a person? Valuing me for who I am rather than what I can provide? I don't see much evidence of that. She started to cry then, soft sniffles that once would have broken my heart and made me apologize for everything. Mom, please. I don't want us to fight. I don't want us to fight either. I want us to have a real relationship based on mutual respect and genuine affection. We do have that. No, we don't. We have a relationship based on your needs and my willingness to meet them without expecting anything in return. What do you want from me? The question hung in the air like a challenge. What did I want? I wanted to matter. I wanted to be seen. I wanted my voice to count for something. I wanted her to call me because she enjoyed talking to me, not because she needed something. I wanted her to be proud to introduce me to her friends, not embarrassed by my presence. I wanted to feel like her mother instead of her employee. I want you to see me, I said finally. I want you to value me. I want you to treat me like I matter. You do matter. Then act like it. Include me in your life because you want me there, not because you need something. Talk to me like I'm a person with thoughts and feelings and opinions worth hearing. Stop being embarrassed by who I am and where I come from. I'm not embarrassed. You told me to keep quiet at your gala. You seated me in the back. You introduced me to your friends like I was someone whose name you couldn't quite remember. If that's not embarrassment, what is it? Another pause, longer this time. I was trying to protect my professional image. From what? Your mother? From the differences in our backgrounds. There it was. The truth she hadn't wanted to say, the truth I already knew but had never heard spoken out loud. You mean you were embarrassed because I'm not rich? Because I didn't go to college? Because I live in a small apartment and shop at discount stores and wear dresses from Macy's instead of designer boutiques? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You're ashamed of me because I remind people where you came from. I'm evidence that you weren't born into privilege, that someone had to sacrifice so you could have the opportunities you've had. And instead of being grateful for those sacrifices, you want to pretend they never happened. She was crying harder now, but I felt oddly calm. Finally, speaking the truth was liberating, even if it was painful. I worked 2 jobs to pay for your dance lessons, I continued. I went without new clothes for years so you could have nice things. I never took a vacation, never bought anything for myself that wasn't absolutely necessary, because every extra dollar went to you and your brother. And now you're successful and educated and polished, and you want to forget that any of that happened. You want to forget me. That's not true. Isn't it? When was the last time you were proud to be my daughter? When was the last time you said, "This is my mom, and she's amazing"? When was the last time you acknowledged what I gave up so you could be who you are today? Silence. The longest one yet. I need to think, she said finally. Good. You should think. And while you're thinking, ask yourself this: what kind of person are you if you're ashamed of the woman who sacrificed everything so you could succeed? After she hung up, I sat in my chair looking at my new painting. The ocean in the picture was calm, peaceful, infinite. I felt like I was floating on it, finally free from the weight of trying to earn love from people who only wanted what I could give them. David called the next day, his voice tight with anger. What did you say to Rebecca? She's been crying since yesterday. I told her the truth. What truth? That I deserved better than being treated like an employee. Mom, you're being ridiculous. We don't treat you like an employee. Don't you? You call when you need something. You expect me to be available when it's convenient for you. You assume I have nothing better to do than wait around for your instructions. How is that different from an employee? We're family. Family members care about each other's well-being. When was the last time you cared about mine? I care about you all the time. Really? Then why did you ask me for $1,500 for your girlfriend's rent without ever asking if I could afford it? Why did you assume I had that money just sitting around with nothing better to do with it? You always help when we need it. Because I love you. But love shouldn't be a one-way transaction. It's not one way. What have you done for me lately, David? And I don't mean calling on holidays or remembering my birthday. I mean actually doing something to make my life better, easier, happier. Silence. I can't think of anything right now, but I can think of plenty of things I've done for you. I can list them if you want. But you can't think of a single thing you've done for me in return. That's different. You're the parent. So being a parent means I'm supposed to give and give and give until there's nothing left of me? Is that what you think parenthood is? Endless sacrifice with no gratitude or consideration in return. No, but you chose to have children. And you chose to be my children. But somewhere along the way, you decided that meant you could take whatever you wanted without giving anything back. This is crazy. You're talking like we're strangers. Aren't we? You don't know anything about my life, my interests, my dreams. You only know what I can do for you. That's not true. What's my favorite color, David? Your favorite color? Yes. You've been my son for 33 years. What's my favorite color? A pause. Blue? It's green. It's always been green. What's my favorite movie? Another pause, longer. I don't know. Casablanca. I've watched it probably 50 times. I quote it all the time. You've never noticed. Mom, what am I afraid of? I don't know. Being forgotten. Being irrelevant. Becoming invisible to the people I love most. And guess what? It's happening. You're not invisible. I am to you. I'm just a resource you tap when you need something. The rest of the time, I don't exist. That's not. I don't mean for it to be like that. I know you don't mean it. But that doesn't make it hurt less. He was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, less defensive. I don't know how to fix this. Start by seeing me as a person instead of just your mother. Start by asking what I need instead of just telling me what you need. Start by spending time with me because you enjoy my company, not because you need something from me. Okay, he said quietly. I can try to do that. And David? Stop asking me for money. If you're old enough to live with a girlfriend, you're old enough to figure out your own finances. Okay. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. After we hung up, I felt something shift inside me. Not hope exactly, but possibility. The possibility that my children could learn to see me as more than just a support system. The possibility that it wasn't too late to have real relationships with them, based on mutual respect rather than one-sided obligation. But even if they couldn't change, I knew now that I could still have a life worth living. I could still matter, even if they couldn't see it. I could still be happy, even if they couldn't appreciate it. I could still be myself, even if they were embarrassed by who I was. I called Carol that evening and told her about the conversations with Rebecca and David. How do you feel? She asked. Scared, I admitted. But also relieved. Like I finally stopped holding my breath. It takes courage to demand better treatment from people you love. I'm tired of accepting less than I deserve just because I'm afraid of being alone. You're not alone, Margaret. You have me. You have other people who value you for who you are, not what you can do for them. She was right. Elena at the bakery always asked about my day. Mrs. Rodriguez in the apartment next to mine often invited me for coffee. The librarian at the local branch knew my name and always recommended books she thought I'd enjoy. There were people in my life who saw me as a whole person, not just a collection of services. I had been so focused on earning love from my children that I had overlooked the love that was already available to me from other sources. Not better or worse than family love, but different. Cleaner. Less complicated by history and expectation and obligation. A month passed without much contact from Rebecca or David. They called occasionally, brief conversations that felt stilted and careful. I could tell they were processing what I had said, trying to figure out how to relate to this new version of their mother who had opinions and boundaries and expectations. Then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon in November, Rebecca showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door to find her standing in the hallway, her usually perfect hair dampened by the drizzle, her designer coat wrinkled like she had slept in it. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside to let her pass, noting how she looked around my small space like she was seeing it for the first time. She had been to my apartment dozens of times over the years, but always briefly, always on her way to somewhere else, always with the air of someone who couldn't wait to leave. Would you like some tea? I asked. Yes, please. I put the kettle on and got my good cups from the cabinet, the ones I saved for special occasions. Somehow, this felt like a special occasion, even though I wasn't sure what we were marking. Your place looks nice, she said, settling onto my small couch. Different. I had made some changes since my trip to Florida. New curtains, brighter colors, small touches that made the space feel more like home and less like somewhere I was just waiting. The painting from Florida hung on the wall like a window to another world. I've been fixing it up a little. It feels more you. I wasn't sure what she meant by that, but I took it as a compliment. The tea was ready, so I poured 2 cups and sat down across from her in my reading chair. I've been thinking about what you said, she began, holding her cup like it might break. About the gala, about how I treated you. I waited, giving her space to find her words. I was wrong, she said quietly. I was so worried about how I looked to other people that I forgot. I forgot you were a person with feelings. I forgot you were my mom. I appreciate you saying that. No, I need to say more than that. I need to apologize. Really apologize, not just say sorry and expect everything to go back to normal. I sipped my tea and waited. I was embarrassed, she continued. Not of you, exactly, but of the difference between where I am now and where we came from. And when I saw you at the gala in your dress from Macy's, talking to my colleagues about Dad's construction work, I panicked. I thought they would think less of me. I thought it would hurt my career. And you decided that was more important than my feelings. Yes. And I was wrong. I was so wrong. Tears were starting to spill down her cheeks, but she kept talking. You worked so hard to give me opportunities. You sacrificed everything so I could go to college, so I could have dancing lessons, so I could be whoever I wanted to be. And instead of being proud of that, instead of being grateful, I tried to hide it. I tried to hide you. Why? Because I was ashamed. Not of you, but of myself. I was ashamed that I wanted those things more than I valued the person who gave them to me. I was ashamed that I had become someone who cared more about other people's opinions than about the woman who raised me. She was crying openly now, and I felt my own eyes filling with tears. But they weren't sad tears, exactly. They were something else, something like relief. I don't know how to fix what I've broken, she said. I don't know how to be a good daughter to you when I've spent so many years being a terrible one. You start by seeing me, I said softly. You start by remembering that I'm not just your mother. I'm Margaret. I'm a woman who liked to dance before I had children. I'm someone who reads mystery novels and watches old movies and dreams about traveling to places I've never been. I'm someone who gets lonely and scared and excited and proud, just like you do. I want to know those things about you, she said. I want to know who you are when you're not being my mom. I'd like that too. We talked for 3 hours that afternoon. Really talked, maybe for the first time in years. She asked me questions about my childhood, my marriage to her father, my dreams for the future. I asked her about her work, her relationships, the things that made her happy and the things that kept her awake at night. It wasn't magic. One conversation couldn't undo years of distance and misunderstanding. But it was a beginning, a foundation we could build on if we both chose to put in the work. When she got up to leave, she hugged me at the door. Not the quick, obligatory embrace we usually shared, but a real hug, long and tight and meaningful. Can I call you this weekend? She asked. Not because I need anything, but just to talk. I'd like that. After she left, I sat in my chair looking at my painting and thinking about forgiveness. Not just her need for my forgiveness, but my need to forgive myself for allowing the pattern to continue for so long. I had enabled the dynamic by always saying yes, always giving more, always accepting less. I had taught them that my needs didn't matter by never expressing them clearly. But that was the past. What mattered now was the future, and the possibility that we could create something better together. David called that weekend, his voice tentative and careful. Rebecca told me about your conversation, he said. Did she? She said it was good. Different, but good. It was. I was wondering. Would you like to have dinner? Nothing fancy, just. I thought maybe we could talk. Like you and Rebecca did. My heart jumped a little. I'd like that very much. Good. Great. There's this small Italian place near your neighborhood. Would that be okay? It would be perfect. We met the following Tuesday at a little restaurant on Mulberry Street that I had walked past hundreds of times but never entered. David was already there when I arrived, looking nervous and young despite being 33 years old. You look nice, Mom, he said, standing to pull out my chair. I was wearing a new blouse I had bought with some of the money I hadn't given him for rent. It was emerald green, my favorite color, and it made me feel confident and attractive. Thank you. You look nice too. We ordered wine, something we had never done together before. It felt adult, sophisticated, like we were two people getting to know each other rather than mother and son fulfilling obligatory roles. I owe you an apology, he said after the waiter left. Several, actually. He laughed, surprising both of us. Yeah, several. But I want to start with the money thing. It was wrong to ask you for that much without thinking about whether you could afford it or what you might have to give up to help us. It was wrong to assume I had nothing better to do with my money than solve your problems. You're right. I think I've always seen you as someone whose life revolved around me and Rebecca. Like you didn't have your own wants or needs or dreams. I let you think that by never talking about my wants or needs or dreams. But you shouldn't have had to. I should have been curious enough to ask. The wine arrived, and we toasted to new beginnings. It felt ceremonial, important. Tell me about Linda, I said. Really tell me, not just the basics. His face lit up. She's amazing, Mom. She's smart and funny and kind. She volunteers at an animal shelter on weekends. She makes these incredible chocolate chip cookies. She laughs at my terrible jokes. She sounds wonderful. Why haven't I gotten to know her better? He looked uncomfortable. I guess I thought you wouldn't have much in common. Because I'm old? Because you're different. You and Rebecca and I, we talk about family stuff, practical stuff. Linda and I talk about books and movies and ideas. I didn't think you'd be interested. What books does she like? Mystery novels, mostly. Agatha Christie, Louise Penny, people like that. I smiled. I love Louise Penny. I've read all her Inspector Gamache books. His eyes widened. Really? Really? I'd love to talk to her about them. I had no idea you read mysteries. There are a lot of things you don't know about me, David. But that can change if you want it to. We spent the rest of the evening talking about books, movies, politics, travel, all the things he thought I wouldn't be interested in. It turned out we had more in common than either of us had imagined. I wasn't just his mother, I was a person with opinions and interests and stories worth hearing. When he walked me to the subway, he said, "Would you like to have dinner with Linda and me next weekend? Actually have dinner, not just meet briefly at a family event." "I'd love that." "Great. And Mom? I'm going to start calling you more. Not just when I need something, but just to talk. Like normal people do." "I'd like that too." On the train home, I thought about the evening and how different it had felt from our usual interactions. We had talked to each other instead of at each other. We had listened instead of just waiting for our turn to speak. We had been honest about our feelings instead of hiding behind politeness and obligation. It wasn't going to be easy to rebuild these relationships. Years of patterns don't change overnight. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Hopeful that I could have real connections with my children. Hopeful that I could matter to them as a person, not just as a provider. Hopeful that the rest of my life could be different than the first 73 years. Spring came early that year, and with it, a sense of renewal that felt both external and internal. My apartment was lighter, filled with plants I had bought myself and artwork that made me smile. My calendar was fuller too, with dinners with David and Linda, coffee dates with Rebecca, visits from Nathan that felt like genuine family time rather than babysitting duty. One Saturday morning in April, I was getting ready to meet Elena from the bakery for a walk in the park when my phone rang. It was Rebecca, and her voice was excited. "Mom, I have news. The board approved my proposal for the community outreach program at the hospital." "That's wonderful, sweetheart. You must be thrilled." "I am. And Mom, I want you to come to the launch event. Not as someone I'm obligated to invite, but as someone I'm proud to have there." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I want to introduce you to my colleagues as the woman who raised me, the woman who made all of this possible. I want them to meet my mom." My mom. Not just Margaret or my mother, but my mom. It was a small thing, but it felt enormous. "I'd be honored to be there." "Great. And Mom? Wear whatever makes you feel beautiful. I don't care if it's from Macy's or Saks Fifth Avenue. I just want you to feel comfortable and confident." After we hung up, I sat in my chair looking at my ocean painting and thinking about the journey I had taken over the past year. I had started out invisible, dismissed, taken for granted. I had been told to keep quiet, and I had finally found my voice. I had been treated as less than, and I had learned to demand better. Most importantly, I had remembered who I was underneath all the roles and expectations and obligations. I was Margaret, a woman who had lived and loved and sacrificed and survived. I was someone worth knowing, worth respecting, worth celebrating. The launch event was held at the hospital on a warm evening in May. I wore a green dress I had bought specially for the occasion, not from Macy's this time, but from a small boutique in the village where the owner had helped me find something that made me feel elegant and confident. Rebecca met me at the entrance, and her smile was radiant. "Mom, you look absolutely beautiful." "So do you, darling." She took my arm and led me into the reception area, where dozens of people were mingling with drinks and appetizers. This time, when she introduced me to her colleagues, her voice was warm with pride. "I'd like you to meet my mother, Margaret. She's the reason I'm able to do this work. Everything I've accomplished is built on her sacrifices and her love." I met doctors and board members and other hospital staff, and each introduction felt genuine, respectful. These people saw me not as someone to be hidden or managed, but as someone worth knowing. As Rebecca's mother, yes, but also as myself. During the presentation, Rebecca spoke about the new program and its goals. But she also spoke about something else. "This program is about recognizing that every person has value, regardless of their economic status or background," she said. "It's about seeing people for who they are, not just what they can provide. It's a lesson I learned from my mother, who taught me through her example that love means seeing and valuing the whole person." She looked directly at me when she said it, and I felt tears spring to my eyes. Not tears of sadness or frustration, but tears of joy. She saw me. Finally, fully, she saw me. After the event, as we walked to the restaurant where we were meeting David and Linda for dinner, Rebecca slipped her arm through mine. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For not giving up on us. For demanding better. For teaching me that love isn't just about need, it's about respect and recognition and genuine care. Thank you for learning." The dinner was wonderful, all of us together, talking and laughing like the family we had always had the potential to be. Nathan was there too, and instead of being shuttled off to the side while the adults talked, he was included in the conversation, asked for his opinions, treated like a whole person. I could see Rebecca making the same choice I had made, to value and respect the people she loved instead of just using them. As I looked around the table at my family, really looked at them, I realized that the woman who had sat alone at that gala 8 months ago was gone. In her place was someone stronger, clearer, more whole. Someone who knew her own worth and insisted that others recognize it too. Later that night, back in my apartment, I called Carol to tell her about the evening. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "You took a terrible situation and turned it into an opportunity for growth and change." "I'm proud of me too," I said, and meant it. "What's next for you?" I looked at my suitcase, sitting by the door packed for another trip to Florida. But this time, I wasn't running away from anything. I was running toward something: new experiences, new friendships, new possibilities. "I'm going to keep living," I said. Really living, not just existing in the margins of other people's lives. "Good for you." After we hung up, I sat in my chair one last time before bed, looking at my ocean painting and thinking about the tides. How they recede and return, how they reshape the shore with each cycle, how they're always moving, always changing, always becoming something new. I thought about the woman I had been, the one who disappeared into the background, who accepted crumbs and called them love, who believed that her worth was measured only by what she could do for others. She wasn't gone entirely, she was part of me, part of my history. But she wasn't all of me anymore. I thought about the woman I was becoming, the one who spoke up for herself, who demanded respect, who recognized her own value independent of others' needs. She was still emerging, still growing, still learning. But she was strong, and she was real, and she was mine. Most of all, I thought about the lesson I wanted to share with anyone who might be listening, anyone who might recognize themselves in my story. Your worth is not determined by what you can give to others. Your value is not measured by your usefulness. Your voice matters, your needs matter, you matter, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. It took me 73 years to learn that lesson fully. But it's never too late to remember who you were before you became invisible. It's never too late to demand better. It's never too late to reclaim your life. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever been told to keep quiet when what you wanted most was to be heard? Have you ever wondered if your worth was tied only to what you could provide, not who you are? If any of this sounds familiar, I want you to know that you're not alone. And I want you to know that it's possible to change the story, even when it feels like the patterns are too old and too deep to alter. Tell me in the comments, have you lived this experience, or do you know someone who has? Your story matters, and sharing it might help someone else find the courage to speak up for themselves too. And if this video helped you in any way, if it made you think or feel or remember something important, please like it and subscribe. It helps me keep opening my heart and sharing these stories with people who need to hear them. Because sometimes, knowing we're not alone is the first step toward finding our voice again.